and it hits me, oh my gosh, this is that triangle.
You know, there's explanation for everything that occurred in the Rendlesham Forest incident that doesn't involve aliens at all.
It was completely silent. It comes right over our heads.
He saw a classic flying saucer really standing in the clearing.
He turned over to my father and held his hand, and he looked in his eyes and he said, "We're not alone."
Welcome to Podcast UFO for our live show. We're live every Wednesday at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on the Dark Matter Radio Network. Please remember to visit the website podcastufo.com for past episodes, blogs, and forums. During the show, feel free to participate live in our chat room. And don't forget to like us on our very active Facebook page.
Hello and welcome to the show. This is Martin, your host. And I have to say that this week's been kind of bad. First of all, looking outside at a ton of snow, and we've had 2 more feet today, and a lot of snow on Monday, which meant that my flight to the Phoenix Internationl UFO Congress was canceled, so I couldn't go. And the soonest I could get out there to rebook was on Friday, and of course the live show was out at that point. So stuck here in the snow, I unpacked everything, all the equipment I had packed up, clothes and all that for nice sunny days. And I am missing a cord on my mixing board that kind of made things work the way I'm doing my live streaming now. So I live on top of a mountain in the middle of no place. And I had an hour. I got to the studio here, and about an hour left to try to figure things out. I tried everything. So I ended up trying to get the show started, but had to edit it out because no one in the YouTube chat, they were all saying they couldn't hear the guest. And it was really frustrating. So what I ended up doing is I ended up taking some calls from the people that were trying to listen to the live stream and try to answer some questions. I do apologize to the listener. This is not my best moment. So hang in. We should have a good show next week. And I really, truly apologize for a subpar show this week. All right. Thank you. And here we go. A couple of calls on a cell phone speakerphone is all I could do. While we're here, and you made the effort to be here, I had to say goodbye to Jordan because I just couldn't figure this out. I got packed up for the Phoenix show, and just one thing happened after another. There's a cable missing. I don't know what happened to that. So I couldn't join the audio the way I normally do. All right. So since I'm just sitting here and feeling kind of crazy right now, I'm not really sure what to do. So if you have some questions in the chat room you want to throw at me, I mean, I can't even take calls. The only thing I could do is take a phone call, and I can repeat your question online, but I can't get the call. Obviously, I can't get the call to come over the air. And unless I do speakerphone, could try that. Does anyone there want to call me and ask a question? Not you, Donnie. That wouldn't be fair because you were here in the studio a few weeks ago. But does anyone else want to give me a call? Because I'll give you my cell number, but you have to destroy the number afterwards. You have to promise. All right? Okay, there's the phone number right there if you want to call. And you can be on speakerphone. We'll give it a shot. I mean, what the heck? You're here. You made the effort to be here. Phil, you're the one that said this was a train wreck, and I agree. I have to agree with you. But you're welcome to call me. And someone's calling. Hello, caller.
Hello, Martin. It's Jason from England. How are you?
Good. I'm going to try to crank your volume a little bit. Go ahead. Say that one more time.
Hello. How's things doing? Okay.
Can you hear him on the... can you hear? Okay. So this is Jason?
Yeah. Just so you know, Martin, there's a delay on the chat room. It's probably about a 30-second delay. So when we're all typing away saying we can hear you, you've got to wait 30 seconds for that to appear on your screen.
You're right. I should have known that, and I could see that if only I had the two different screens up. I could tell that there is a volume. Yes, I can't boost his volume, Don. It's all the way up. So anyway. So, did you have a question? I mean, it would be nice to get some type of.
Well, Joe, I've been wanting to talk for a while about. I'm just like sick of so-called experts, and you hear about these people, and the latest one was the chemtrail of a plane, and they've studied it for 2 years, and it's like it's becoming a joke, and who are experts anymore?
Well, I know that Mick from, Metabunk has been working on the contrails and the jet streams now for many, many years, and he's got a lot of information. And, it's one of these things. I started the show. It's called the Everything Else Show. I'll just pop it up here. That's the graphic for it. And I'm going to do things. Yeah, I'm going to do things like, contrails, chemtrails, like maybe debate about it, because I understand there's quite a bit of controversy whether they actually exist or not. And I don't know. It's one of those things I'm on the fence about.
Yeah. I mean, the other thing that we spoke about, and you mentioned it at the conference last year, was, as I said, I live in the UK, and they were testing, back in the early 1980s, they were testing stealth fighters, and someone shouted me down saying that they wouldn't test a stealth fighter in broad daylight. Well, they have to. They have no choice. You don't fly over deserts for months and months and months on end and then try and send an assault over a city. It's that simple. You have to test it. But what they were doing was they were testing the stealth fighters against a new version of radar. And everyone was seeing UFOs in my hometown. Everybody was seeing UFOs. It was simply that. And I believe that they can fly aircraft in broad daylight, experimental aircraft, because people will just see UFO. That's what they think they are. It's the perfect code for that sort of project.
Are you on speakerphone by chance, Jason?
No, I'm not. No.
Oh,
no.
Okay. It's hard for me to understand exactly what you're saying about these chemtrails. It's
right.
just I guess it's just the way I have to hold the phone here in front of the microphone.
I was just saying about stealth aircraft and that sort of thing, about how they get mixed up with.
Mm-hmm.
And we had problems in my own town where they were testing stealth aircraft in the 1980s, and they were basically flying an ordinary jet alongside a stealth aircraft and checking that it couldn't be seen by radar. And our hometown, over a 2-week period, had thousands of UFO sightings.
Wow.
And I remember, and this is like the same when, because you were at the conference last year, and there was someone there who said there was a legend expert who said, "Oh, that would never happen." Well, I actually know the guy who was on the ground crew doing the tests, so I know it's true. I know they do these things. So it's not like I'm no expert. I spoke to someone who was actually there doing the test.
Wow. So did you say there were thousands of UFO sightings right after that?
Yeah. When I say thousands of people saw.
Oh, I see.
It and reported it to the police. So basically, it was over like a 2 or 3 week period. They'd basically flown in and they were testing them. So basically, they fly 2 aircraft. You have a stealth aircraft and you have an ordinary English fighter fly alongside each other. And then what they were doing, they were testing this radar to see if the radar could see the stealth fighter, and they were using the other fighter aircraft as a cover to see that was visible. And they were looking for 2 bleeps on the radar. And they had no choice but to test it over a town, because they would have to fly sources over a town. But as I say, it's like the experts told me I'm wrong, but I actually know someone who was involved in the test back then. This is, I mean, obviously it's way past its secrecy rules, you know. We're going back, you know, to the early mid-1980s. So I'm not telling you any secrets. So I get sick to death of experts saying to me, "Oh, that couldn't be the case." When I know that is the case, you know.
Yeah. So, Jason, where exactly are you? And isn't it like in the middle of the night wherever you are?
It's 1:48 in the morning. I'm because of my work, I'm a documentary producer, and I tend to work late, and I tend to work at night time, so I won't get to sleep until probably 3 a.m. this morning. So that's going to be, so probably about 3 a.m., so it's nearly 2 now. So I normally listen to the show or watch the show and then go to bed. But I'm working on a documentary, a bodybuilding documentary at the moment. But the other things you were talking about, the other show, that really intrigues me as well, because there's lots of things that I would like to be able to make programs about, such as people, remote viewing. I'd be very interested in doing something on remote viewing, because it really intrigues me. So there's lots of things I'd like to cover within what you're doing as well. The UFO market is oversubscribed with documentaries, and none of them make any money at it. It's not a money-making exercise. You do it for the passion of it.
Yeah. It's kind of like what I'm doing right now.
Absolutely right. You know, it's like people think, "Oh, I make a documentary and I make a fortune at it. I don't make a penny."
Yeah. Unfortunately, that's the way it is. On this new show that I have called the Everything Else Show coming up is Edwin, I think, C. May, who is involved in the government Stargate project, and he's releasing a book coming up on remote viewing, plus ESP and a few other things, and basically what the government really did know and didn't know type of thing with all of the, he's basically coming out with everything in this book coming up, and so he's going to be on sometime in May. Should be pretty interesting on that show.
I'll be looking forward.
Again, that's not the UFO show. Let me ask you something. I've talked to a number of people in the UK and England, and they say, the weather is kind of really tough for UFO sightings there. Is that kind of just a too much of a general statement?
No, it's not. It's not, because I mean, I've been wanting to make a how to film UFO videos for some months now, and because it's winter and it's cold and it's dark and it's rainy, I can't go out with a camera and do the filming because it's too cloudy. And I've got a camera that's got infrared on it. I've got a Sony camera that can film in almost complete darkness as well. And I want to go out and try them, and I can't do it because the weather is just too bad. And it was one that I said to you I'd like to give to you to put out on your site when it's done. So basically, it gives people an idea of how the best way to film when they're trying to film UFOs. I'm not going to say I'm going to capture anything, but what I want to say is it tells you the best methods to use when you're filming.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yes. There are, it's really amazing that you see that there are some of these people that seem to be able to film a lot of sightings. Not that they're always, always end up being actually something unidentified totally. A lot of times, these things are explained like there's someone in like one of the cities, I think maybe New York City or something like that films all kinds of UFOs, but a lot of them are like flying bags and, things like that. But there are some people that are just plain dedicated that go out every day and, every sunny day and just film hours and hours and hours and, and catch one or catch something here and there. But more power to them. So, Jason, thanks so much. I'm going to see, and thanks always for joining in the chat room. And I really do appreciate it. And you're Doc, aren't you? Are you Doc? Or am I thinking of someone else?
I'm Doc.
You are.
No, it's me. I'm Doc. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
All right. Well,
Yeah.
great talking to you.
I'll email you in the week.
All right. Thanks so much. All right. Take care.
Okay. Cheers, Martin. Speak soon.
All
Bye-bye.
right.
Bye-bye.
Thanks now. Bye-bye. All right, everyone. I've never done a show like this. This is like, I'll try to make it a call-in show. Again, I'm going to put my phone number up here if someone would like to call. There it is in chat, and you're welcome to give a call and join in this show. Ask a question. I'd like to hear from Phil. Phil, you always have a lot of interesting things to say, and you were in there a minute ago. If you would like to call me, I'd love to hear from you. Phil is a man of science, and he loves this topic. But if you don't want to call, that's okay. Anyone can call that number that I just posted in the chat room, and you're welcome to give a call. I really am hesitating to say it over the line. If you don't want to call in and you just have a question or you want to talk about a topic, feel free to throw a topic out there and we'll start discussing it. You can join in the chat room. Here's the question. It says, Martin, can you speculate why you think aliens would to visit us? That is a really good question, Mr. Aweezy up on chat. I've said a couple times on this show that if there is... Whoop, we have a call coming in. I'll get back to that. Just remind me. We have a call coming in right now. Hello, and who is this?
Hi, Martin. This is your old buddy, Phil.
You're calling in, Phil. How are you?
I am wonderful. I wanted to call and apologize for the Trainwreck UFO comment. It just seemed to fit somehow. I don't know why, but...
Well, it would make it would actually make an interesting title. I'd probably get more traffic if I had that on my website.
That's what I told my wife because she was wondering what I was laughing about.
Yeah.
And she thought it was a good idea, too.
Yeah.
So I'll be unemployed soon, Martin. I was thinking about taking a trip out to Maine with my tools and things and see if I can help your audio.
Whoa, boy. I thought you meant for tools because I have a house that I'm, 2 houses that I'm working on here. So, yeah, you can bring those type of tools, too. Got a guest house for you, Phil. You're welcome anytime.
Cool.
The only problem is
it may happen.
I'm actually in the guest house right now. I moved my studio over here to try to get rid of the static. And this is the only heated room in the entire house right now. So...
Well, your static is still following you.
It is, yeah. It's nice.
I heard just a little bit of it, but I've got a few ideas about that. But I guess to make this call pertinent to the UFO business, I was wondering if you had... I wrote you an email a few weeks back about, the Kevin Randall flip-flop kind of thing.
Yes.
Where he...
Now, I heard there was something I heard about this. Now, I haven't actually heard the flip-flop, and the Kevin Randall flip-flop is what Kevin Randall, who was one of the original investigators of the Roswell incident, joined in with some books, him and Don Schmidt and Tom Carey, and they didn't really have a falling apart. It's just that Tom Carey and Don Schmidt kind of grouped together, and then there's Kevin Randall. Now, Kevin Randall has a blog online, and a lot of times, just, I'm rambling a little bit here, Phil, but I will get to your answer. A lot of times when I'm looking at a case and I'm thinking about having someone on the show involving that case, I'll start to research it just to make sure that it's not fringe or it's not been disproven or something like that. And I'll be darned if about 80% of the time I'll land on Kevin Randall's blog and he'll have an interesting take. And now I'm not saying that Kevin Randall is always 100% right, but he really thinks things through. And so you can find a lot of answers on his blog if some of these cases like Aztec and, which I actually did a show on, but just to hear what the person's take was on that. So anyway, the flip-flop, someone else wrote somewhere on some type of blog or something, Phil, that indeed he has. It says, as far as I got, because I was just really busy, I never got a chance to listen to it. But I think you are correct. He has changed his mind a bit about Roswell. And it's kind of funny because he really didn't bring it up when he was on my show, or we didn't talk about it too much. And unfortunately, I hadn't heard about that, before he was on the show.
I listened to him on George Knapp's show, and it's been about 2 years ago. I just listened to it today when I was taking my dogs out for a walk in the woods, and he was really, like, right on top of it. And then I heard, he was still seeming to think there was something reasonable there, but then I heard him more recently, like this year or late last year, where he seemed to, like, sort of thought the whole Roswell thing was completely hopeless at that point. And there was such a dichotomy there between, 3 years ago and now. And I'm just thinking to myself, well, what's happened? Nothing. It just seemed like a very strange turn of events that all of a sudden he just thinks there's not much there. And I just don't get that, because it just seems like one of the more interesting cases next to the Rendlesham thing, which he also talked about that too, which I don't know. The more I've been listening to this stuff, and I got into the whole UFO thing because I was into near-death experiences when I was in college, and I happened to read a reference by Kenneth Ring about how similar abductions were to near-death experiences. And I thought, that's interesting. I have to read a UFO book. So I've been reading UFO books since 1977, I think it was. And you probably realize this too. It's a freaking mess. It just seems to keep getting weirder and weirder. And especially, that's why the whole Kevin Randle thing kind of freaked me out to some extent, because he is a very intelligent man, very, very well-spoken. And it almost seems to me like he's burned out or something and thought himself into a box and just kind of wants to go on a long vacation or something.
Well, I've seen that happen a lot over the years where, someone just gets burned out on the topic. I've actually had a few people that, I'm not going to say their names, but have actually told me privately that, they've about had it. And I think, part of that is the frustration of being really involved in this and really looking very hard and not coming up with any answers. I think people just get tired of it, and then they get tired of all the I don't want to say hoaxing, but the politics of it. And, if people don't come up with something interesting, then a lot of people will stop, paying attention to them. So they may have to...
It's almost like mediums, back at the turn of the last century or the century before last. All the hoaxing that started with mediums because they weren't getting the results that they thought they should be getting, so they started making stuff up.
Mm-hmm.
That was kind of the same sort of thing. And I agree with you. I think that it's just so all over the map that, people are always, I hear these shows all the time. People are always asking, what's the answer? What's the answer? And it's just so all over the map that I don't know why. I guess people don't realize that there might be actually multiple answers. There isn't an answer to it. It's just could be one of any number of things going on that have perfectly mundane explanations to the most bizarre, psychic thing, for lack of a better word.
Yeah. I think we, the more we think we know, or the more we try to know, the less we actually do know. I think that's what it really boils down to. And there was someone, along this line, these lines here. There was someone that I had watched a documentary from, 1990s, I believe it was. And you look at some of these people that were on top of the game in the UFO field, and they're gone. They don't want, I forget who I connected with Ray Stanford. It says, how about, and I do forget the ufologist's name, but I said, how about this guy? He looks really, interesting. And he says, he got out of the UFO field. And and I've written some people before that responded, yeah, I'm not interested in that anymore. And I think, there could be multiple reasons why people leave the arena, so to speak. But I always like to hear stories from people that are kind of, outside of the UFO field. When I talk to someone and meet someone and the topic comes up, I'm reluctant to bring it up in mixed company. But when the topic does come up, I love hearing stories of people that, are not involved in the UFO field. It's really interesting. It seems like everyone has a story.
There just aren't many people that are really that interested. The people I work with are mostly, these hardcore science types. And I'm kind of an anomaly there to some extent. And most of my cohorts look at me and think I'm basically out of my mind, that they're smiling and laughing, and I don't care. They've known me for a long time, and they know I'm not crazy. They just think that, I am gullible or something, but I'm really not. I just, you have to. You know this probably better than I do. You have to be an honest skeptic of this stuff. Otherwise, you'll be swallowing everything that comes down the pike, and that doesn't do anybody any good.
It seems almost like every show you'll send me your thoughts about the guests, and a lot of times you can, punch holes in their stories. I mean, not every guest, but you have a.
I'm kind of a hard ass about that kind of thing, because it really bugs me. I mean, the one thing that really bugs me more than anything are people that just are shining other people on, and it just discredits the whole shooting match. Just like the Roswell slide thing. That was. Which reminds me, and I wanted to bring this up too, because I just saw the other day on the internet, source of all wisdom, that Google or somebody that works for them has figured out a way to depixelate photographs. So, like, you've probably seen CSI where they'll have a fuzzy screen image, and then they'll push a few buttons on the PC, and all of a sudden the face is clear.
Really? Yep.
Yeah, well, that was always a fantasy, because there aren't enough pixels to support the image that they get.
Right.
But Google has apparently figured out some way to do that with photographs. Like, they've taken a lot of different faces, and they showed a bunch of examples of highly pixelated photographs, then converted back to an image that looks very similar to the actual person. And the reason I'm bringing this up is I was thinking about that Raimi memo thing.
I was just thinking that. I was just going to ask you. That is, we've said on the show before, if technology moves along and they can figure out a new technology to decipher that, but I can't remember.
Well, I think.
Go ahead.
I think that they have, though, because the whole business with faces, at least in my opinion, is far more difficult thing to depixelate than the written or the typed word, because there are only 26 characters in the alphabet,
right?
And it seems to me that would be a more or less trivial application that they probably haven't even tried, but it might be worthwhile to whoever that. I can't remember the name of the guy who has been the most prolific in trying to decode that negative. But if you know what his name is, you might, or know his email, you might run that by him once, to look into this depixelating thing, because it's different than the other methods that I know that they've tried.
Hey, do you mind? We got another call coming in. I'm going to take this other call.
Sure.
All right. All right. Take care. Yeah.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Caller.
Yes.
Yeah. What's your name, caller?
It's Ed in Norwich.
Ed. Are you the Ed in the chat room?
Yeah, it's me. It's me.
Hey, we finally get to talk. How are you?
Yeah, I'm excellent. I just put a copy of Ray Stanford's book in the mail today, so I'm super excited, of course.
Oh, yeah. Did he sign it for you?
Oh, of course. I heard him on the Kevin Randall blog, so I ordered it right away, of course. And Ray said he doesn't think he's going to be selling them anymore, so everybody should get one if they can at this point.
Yeah.
His wife is trying to get him to keep some aside for the archive, whatever.
Yeah. Now that book, it's called Flying Saucer in the Pentagon Pantry. Is that what it's called?
Socorro Saucer in the Pentagon Pantry.
Yeah. That is an excellent book. It's
the biggest case of all time, and we know that Ray was there 4 days after the landing and was talking to Hynek and everybody else.
Yes.
He's the longest running UFO researcher in history, the most effective in my mind, at least. I mean, I have to disagree with Phil. I mean, if you disregard 95% of the subject, you'll still have 5% of incredible research. And Robert Hastings, Ray Stanford, Jerome Clark, even Major Kehoe. The field hasn't really come that far, but there's like Hynek said, there's an embarrassment of riches on the field.
Yeah. No, that's great. And
Martin, I just want to interject. Speaking of dark objects, there was a Russian submarine sighted tonight right off the coast, about 10 miles south of here.
Where are you again now?
Right near Groton, Connecticut.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Somebody asked about the reason for the UFO phenomenon. This is something I've been thinking about for years, but we can't laugh at the fact that 50,000 craft have been seen collecting rocks and flowers for 70 years. When we look at the political times, I mean, they could know something we don't as far as the end of the world, etc. So, that could be one reason for this collection of specimens, because this is not a world they're going to come across every day. So that could be one of the reasons for the whole phenomenon.
Wow. Hey, someone wanted to know, this is kind of a bizarre question, but are you the Ed that discredits Dr. Jacobs? Now, I know, there are people that have all sides of that argument. You're not that Ed, right?
No, not. Are you talking about Robert Jacobs or?
No, David Jacobs.
No, I've never really spoken about David Jacobs.
Okay, all right. So that answers the question in the chat room. So Groton, Connecticut. In what? Now I know you're really well versed on a lot of topics because you've sent me a number of emails. And what got you interested in the UFO subject to begin with?
Well, as a child, I paid attention to anything that was in the paper. I remember the Trinidad Island photographs, which caught my attention. And being a military brat, I heard things living in Rhode Island in the mid-'60s. There was a big sighting in the Blackstone Valley. So it was just something that interested me. I really didn't give it much credence until I had my own sighting, though. That was in 1999, when I really, got my socks turned off because another cab driver saw a craft at like 2 in the morning in the New London, Connecticut area. And it wasn't like a light in the sky. It was something at almost ground level, going probably a mile a second. And it was coming from the submarine base down there in Groton, which Robert Hastings has made a definite connection between nuclear weapons and the subject of UFOs. And they do have tactical weapons over there at the submarine base.
Okay. In the chat room, can you tell me, how's the volume? The volume sounded really loud on the phone right now. How does it sound now? In the chat room. I know there's a delay, so I have to wait. So is this because of a nuclear subs? Is that what you're saying, Ed?
Yeah. Any place where you have nuclear power, nuclear weapons is where the vast majority of sightings beginning in the 40s and the early 50s began. And at the time, I wasn't aware of the connection, but this thing was heading on a direction from the military base there across the Coast Guard Academy grounds. Mm-hmm. And, I come to find out that those are the people that see UFOs, cops and cab drivers, as it turns out. Over 25,000 police officers have reported UFOs over the past 70 years, including Lonnie Zamora. In other words, that fact alone speaks volumes on the whole subject, I think.
Right. Yeah. I've told this on the show a number of times, but it's been quite a while since I told it. But years ago, I had a insurance agent, life insurance agent, and he came over the house a bunch of times, and we got into a general conversation. And he said to me, he started talking about. He goes, "What do you think about UFOs? Have you ever thought about that topic?" Ed, there seems to be some clicking or something on your end. What's going on that?
Sorry.
Yep. Okay. So he asked me, if I ever thought about it, and I said, well, I don't know. When I was a kid, I guess I did. And so he told me basically a story that he was involved in the Air Force during Vietnam in a special secret part of the Air Force that investigated UFOs in Vietnam. And so I said, really? And I remember, getting interested in it. And then he started to say they're very attracted to anything to do with, nuclear, missiles and things like that. And, this is going back into the early 90s that I heard about this. And I didn't really get into this topic until...
As a matter of fact, my landlord was an Air Force security guard at Wiesbaden, Germany in 1971, guarding a weapons storage area. And he was awoken in the middle of the night, said he was actually taking a nap against the fence when he saw a glowing craft. And as soon as he started walking forward, a general alarm sounded, and he was ushered out of there. But I tried to connect him with Robert Hastings, but he's kind of still shy about talking about it. But there we go again with the nuclear connection.
Yeah. I think there's definitely a lot to it. And, I've talked to Robert Hastings a few times about this, and, and I, asking him flat out, I said, what do you think's going on? And he says, he says he thinks they're just trying to stop us from destroying ourselves. That's kind of the bottom line of it.
Yeah, and I think that has to be the major reason for the cover-up as far as the nuclear issue itself, knowing that it's cost the United States $45 trillion since 1943, another 30 from the Soviet Union. Just that money train alone is something that the Air Force didn't want anything connected with the UFO phenomenon. It's a fiasco that the money that was spent on this weaponry that probably won't even work if it was called upon. I hope it would never be, but I think it's great that these things have been turned off on so many occasions, and the government must be paying attention to that.
Yeah. Oh, look, it's Bobby's in the chat room. Now, I personally, I'm going to be in the show that I'm doing coming up. I think it's March 6th on the Everything Else show, the other show that I'm going to be doing. And it's going to be about nuclear arms and nuclear waste and Fukushima and all that. So I'm a semi-activist against nuclear power, and there's going to be some people out there that probably don't like to hear this.
I'm definitely interested in your take on the Fukushima thing, because from what I understand, that could be a huge cover-up in itself. Well,
it's the thing that... about that, I want to kind of stay on the UFO topic, but the thing about that is, it's not going to go away. That's it. Right. And so many people are just pretending it's old news, and it's not. It's not old news. It's something that's going to be haunting us, I believe. The UFO. Someone's asking me on my hat. Okay, so this hat right here was designed after Lonnie Zamora of the original logo that he saw on the Socorro craft. That's on my hat right here. You can see that on YouTube. So that's what that's about. I bought this hat last year or a year ago at the Phoenix UFO Congress. And
if it wasn't for Ray Stanford's work, we would have never really known the actual symbol.
Yeah, poor Ray was trying to listen earlier. I just see an email from him. He was trying to listen earlier, and he got fed up with all the technical difficulties we had. By the way, I should tell everyone that we should be fine next week. I'm going to buy a cable that's missing, and we should be good to go next week. So don't get concerned. We'll be back next week with a better show. Ed, there's the guest of this show that I had to that no one could hear in Skype. He's going to be calling in. So I'm going to say good night to you, and it's been great talking to you. And thanks again for all the videos and email that you send me with a lot of information. I really appreciate that.
Very good morning. I'm so sad that you didn't make it out to the Congress. I just want to say it's terrible.
Yeah. It's just one of those things. I'm thinking about just packing up and driving south for a couple of days. I got to get out of the snow. We have another 2 feet of snow tonight, so I've just about had it. It's right, and I'm not exaggerating when I say it is over the windows in some of my houses and some of my windows. The snow is over the windows and blocking out the sun. What sun?
Snowbound days of Maine.
Yeah, it's too much. I got to get the heck out of here. Anyway, thanks a lot, Ed.
Okay, bye.
All right, bye-bye now. All right, Jordan, I hope to hear from you if you'll call in, and I'm going to put that number up one more time. And Bobby, don't go away without you calling in. So Jordan, the guest of the show, I'm hoping is going to call in, and I don't know. I think you can call from Canada through a regular number. So, Jordan, please call in. Okay, so if Jordan doesn't call in a minute, there was a question way back, and I asked Mr. Aweezy, you asked a question, and I started to answer it, and then the phone rang. The same thing might happen again, but if you want to throw up that up on the chat room, that question you had that I started answering when the call came in. Jordan, is that you?
That is me.
Yes. I want to apologize once again for the technical difficulties. And
not a problem at all, Martin. You're well worth it.
So Jordan, and thanks for being patient. And as we were trying to work this out,
No problem. It's been enjoyable watching you sweat it like this.
Oh boy,
It's better than live TV.
Well, it's I've never done like a call-in show, but I'm glad people are actually calling. And so, I'm trying, in my mind, I'm trying to decide whether I'm just going to put up on the podcast tomorrow. I'm sorry that, the show didn't work out this week or something like that. Or just, run the audio. But, I'm afraid of losing listeners almost. But, the people in the chat room, if it wasn't for these people in the chat room, I would have not even tried. But I do want to say, everyone in the chat room, thanks so much for hanging in here. And I don't even know what I'm doing. But anyway, do you want to talk a little bit about yourself and what you're doing, or do you want to save that for an actual show that's going to work?
Well, I'm happy to do another show, but I'm also happy to chat now. Whatever works for you. We can reschedule something, further down the road, and anytime you need a last-minute guest, I listen to your show live ever since I found your show. So anytime you need someone, you just say it, and I'll give you a phone call.
Okay.
I found your show originally, this is maybe 10 weeks ago or something. I had put a post up on the UFO subreddit. I use Reddit all the time, and I just asked what people's favorite UFO-themed podcasts were, and several people had mentioned your show. And so it was that night I had downloaded a couple of the past episodes. I had found you had done some episodes with people that I knew. Specifically, you had the episode with Don Ledger was the first one I listened to, and pretty much right away your show was just like a breath of fresh air. Your take on the phenomenon is very down to earth. You're very open-minded, and just the conversational tone of the show is just perfect. So pretty much as soon as I listened, I started supporting your show, and then we emailed back and forth. So that's how I found your show.
Well, thank you. Before you go on from that, I just wanted to tell you about Don Ledger. I've wanted to have Don Ledger on again, but you probably heard from the podcast I did with him about Shag Harbor, was that I said, hi, welcome to the show, Don. And then I wasn't able to say another word until the very end when I said, oh, it's time to go. He never stopped talking. And I wanted to ask him, I had a whole list of questions to ask him. But I think he was used to being in a format where he did like a presentation or slideshow or something like that. So he kind of took over my show. People still liked it, but it was... I would really like to have a show where I could actually ask him some questions and really get into a conversation with him. So I do want to try him on again, but I'm going to talk to him ahead of time and tell him, let's let this be more conversational this time. Nice guy, really super nice guy, and he's emailed me and sent me things on Facebook. I really like Don a lot.
Yeah, he's very. He just really knows his stuff. So if you'll ask him any question related to Shag Harbor, the UFO phenomenon, or whatnot, he has. I find he has a hard time summing it up in a couple sentences. He'll just go on and on to the different theorists and different events, and he knows aviation so well. So he'll give you a 15-minute explanation that relates to airplanes that you may never have heard of and whatnot. But I know. I can imagine how you must have felt, because I've been there before. With my podcast, I have a show called the Nighttime Podcast. Mine's a bit different than what you have set up, where I do a lot of editing after the fact, and there's not as much conversation and discussion. It's more so storytelling. So I've had Don on twice, and of, let's say, an hour-long interview, what you actually hear when you listen to the episode is maybe just 5 or 7 minutes of kind of a summary of what we spoke about. But to tell you a bit about what I do, my show is called the Nighttime Podcast, and I cover mysterious things or true crime and a lot of paranormal set within mainly Eastern Canada, but I stick to Canadian content, and a lot of my guests are Canadians, like Don Ledger, and I've had another I guess famous, or at least Canadian famous ufologist, Chris Stiles. He is pretty much the lead on Shag Harbor. I did a 2-part series on Shag Harbor, and Chris was my guest, so it was very cool to hear that story, basically straight from the horse's mouth.
Now, is he the big guy?
Yeah, he's kind of has like a Santa Claus. If Fox Mulder and Santa Claus had a baby, it would look a lot like Chris Stiles.
Okay. Yeah, I know who he is. Yeah, he was really heavily involved in that.
Yeah, he pretty much like Shag Harbor when it originally happened. There was a very minor investigation into it, but it was when Chris Stiles reopened an investigation in the early '90s. He was working on behalf of MUFON at the time. He was the one that really blew the doors off it and turned it into what it is now, which is, at least in Canada, our most famous and most well-known sighting. We call it Canada's Roswell, but I think given the nature of the event and the details of it, I consider it the world's best. But again, I'm not the foremost expert in all this.
Right. So just for the listener that's listening right now, the Shag Harbor incident, can you just kind of go in a nutshell of exactly what happened? And one of the most intriguing parts of that is that it was tracked, the objects was tracked, and then another one, almost like it was a rescue mission or something, and then underwater activity of these things moving at a high velocity, and they actually dove down to one of the one that was just sitting there. And nobody's really talked about that, unless I'm getting my facts wrong. Do I kind of have bits and pieces of it?
Yeah, you have, for the most part, in essence, or in a nutshell, you have it. But a lot of what happened after the original event is up for debate, because it's really the actual incident that had a lot of eyewitnesses. Everything after the fact, with things moving around underwater and maybe a craft leaving the water a week later, that there's very few witnesses or very credible information on that. But to give the story in a nutshell, I'll tell it from the point of view of Laurie Wickens. If you read anything about Shag Harbor, it's often told from his point of view. He was a local fisherman at the time. He was 18 years old in Shag Harbor, Nova Scotia, which is a small fishing community. It was Laurie Wickens, and I think he had 3 friends in the car with him, and they were just driving home late at night, again, the night of October 4th, 1967, and they had seen above the tree line, going at about the same speed of their car, I think it was 4 or 5 lights, just kind of on an angle, but in a straight line. Say like maybe a 45-degree angle, just kind of hovering above the tree line, and they noticed it. The lights appeared to be kind of blinking slowly on and off, a slight yellow tone to the color of the light, and it seemed to be coming down at an angle. So they were initially they noticed the lights, And their first thought was that it was an airplane on its way to landing, and they noticed it, thought, that's awfully low and an odd angle for, the lights on the wings of an airplane. And as they rounded a turn and got at the right vantage point, they could tell that it was, the angle was sharp enough that it was going to touch down in the sound, which is basically the water that Shag Harbor's named from, basically. And as they sped up to try to keep up with the lights, again thinking they're seeing a plane crash, they saw the 4 or 5 lights in sequence. They saw it touch down into the water. They heard a loud sound. They kind of described it as a bomb dropping, like, that sound you'd see from the movie, like, boo! And they heard that sound, heard a loud bang when it hit the water, and their initial thought was, oh, Christ, we just saw a plane crash. So what they did was they just drove just beyond the sound where they saw the lights hit the water to where there was a payphone, and Lori Wickens again had got out of the car, went to the payphone and reported it to the RCMP. And the RCMP, the way he described it on my show, when I did the episode on Shag Harbor, Lori was one of the guests. He had, when he had phoned it into the RCMP, their first response was to ask him, oh, there's a picture of him right there. That's Lori. That's a recent picture. They had asked him if he was drinking. He assured them, no, no, we just saw it. But what ended up happening while they were questioning him, like, are you serious? Are you sure you saw a plane? They started to get other reports from the same area of people reporting, a plane crash or an object crash into the water. And I think it was about 11 reports that came in a very quick, very close proximity of one another. And that was when the RCMP really started to take it serious. And what they had instructed Lori and his friends to do were to drive back to where they saw the lights go into the water, and they agreed to meet him there. There was enough reports that they initially took it very seriously, and I think it was about 10 RCMP officers arrived on the scene, like on the shoreline, to meet Lori and his friends. So in a small town like Shag Harbor, 10 RCMP officers is a big deal. So what happened when they got to the shoreline, and you can stop me if you have questions, Martin. If not, I'll just keep rattling through it. But when they got to the shoreline, they could see out in the water a pretty bright light initially. They could see a light with a yellowish tone floating in the water a good ways out. Their thought was it was the airplane kind of hadn't sunk yet, just kind of floating, and it was some lights from the airplane. So in their mind, there was certainly a whole bunch of people and debris, floating around out in the water. So the RCMP officers standing there with Lori and his friends that were in the car with him, and by this time, a lot of the people from the homes in the area started coming down to the waterfront because they had seen it. But now there's a crowd gathering looking at the yellow light out in the water. It's at this point that the RCMP contact the Canadian Coast Guard and search and rescue, again, assuming that there's probably a passenger jet out there, a commercial plane. It was about 30 minutes from the initial phone call that the Coast Guard got on site. And at that point, what ended up happening was some of the local fishing boats, because this is a fishing community, some of the local fishing boats went out to go to the yellow light, hoping to save some people as this plane sunk, as well as the Coast Guard had a boat on site. But what was happening was, as time was passing, the yellow light was getting dimmer and dimmer. They were assuming that the plane was slowly sinking. But by the time they all got on the boats and got out there, at this point the light was extinguished. They couldn't see anything. And when they got out to the water to where the light had been in the even 5 minutes prior, what they ended up finding, which is quite puzzling, was thick yellow foam. And it was unlike sea foam. Like in this area, it wouldn't be common for there to be that soapy scum on top of the salty water. But in this case, they described it as thick yellow foam with a kind of sulfuric smell. But when I had asked Lori about it, he said that, if you stuck a butter knife off the side of the boat, you could almost scoop it up like jam. Like it was a pretty thick consistency. So that was what happened the actual night of the event, and the facts of that can't be disputed because there were so many people on the scene that had seen the object land in the water. They had seen the yellow light. It was, and not only the amount of people, but the credibility of them, because you have the Canadian Coast Guard, you have the 10 RCMP officers, but what else makes it interesting is that there's so many independent witnesses. It'd be one thing if it was a group of 5 people who were together that saw this, but when you have 10 groups of 3 people that have no relation to each other, it just makes it that much more compelling in my mind.
Right. Someone wanted to know. Let me just pull up this question here real quickly, and that is: were there any other Canadian? Let me try to find this. Were there any other Canadian military police sightings other than Shag Harbor that you're aware of in the last 50 years?
Well, Shag Harbor is definitely the big one, because that investigation, again, since it was an airplane, initially the thought was that it was an airplane that crashed. There's certain protocol, I guess, that has to happen if there's an airplane crashing, and a part of that is, everything is, there's paperwork and the government's involved, and that's why it ended up being government investigated, Shag Harbor. I can't think of any other major Canadian sightings that would have had RCMP or government involvement. I'm on the eastern side of Canada. Shag Harbor is certainly our most well-known sighting. There's several others, but I don't believe any that have have government documents that are irrefutable.
Oops, he's gone. And that is not surprising tonight that happened. He probably thinks I hung up on him, which I didn't. So let me get into here. Probably call right back. Right?
Hello, Martin.
Hi, how you doing? So
I'm doing good.
You got cut off in mid-sentence, and the thing is, as I try to always remember mid-sentences, but it's gone. So
okay. I think you were asking if there was any other government
military.
investigated.
Yes.
Yeah, I don't know of any, especially not to the extent of Shag Harbor. That's for sure.
Yeah. What are some of the other cases that you really were into? Also, just a quick question before you answer that: have you ever interviewed Chris Rutowski?
Yes, I have. The 2-part series I did on Shag Harbor, he was a guest on that as well, and basically giving his point on that episode was to talk a bit about how Shag Harbor relates to other Canadian UFO sightings, but also he presented a compelling theory as to what he thinks happened, and that had to do with the Corona satellite, which was a spy satellite at the time, because this was during the Cold War. This spy satellite would, I guess, go over Europe or whatnot, and then when it would make its way back here, it would drop film canisters, because at the time, spy satellite wasn't digital, so it would drop the film canisters down, and they would land. There was a military base not far from where Shag Harbor is, and in Shelburne, and I guess the Corona satellite would drop the film canisters that would be either intercepted in air or picked up by submarine. And his belief, and he explains it in the second part of the Shag Harbor series, that's what he believes may have been what happened there. Well, he didn't say that's what he thinks happened, but that's the theory that he seemed to be leaning towards when I spoke to him. But yeah, Chris Rutowski is he's incredible. He publishes a Canadian UFO report every year, where each year at the end of the year, he publishes a report in PDF format that it outlines all the sightings, but then it gives stats for, on average, what percent of them are this color or this shape or whatnot. So it's very cool what he puts out every year.
Oh, wow. Hey, just someone just posted on the message board, Earl. So everyone in the message board, I'll ask you too, This show started out as a real train wreck. There's no doubt about it. I can't deny that in any type of way. Someone on the message board said I should just post the whole show. I don't know if I dare to. I owe it to my listeners, and I just realized that I went past the point of no return. In other words, I can't do any editing for the YouTube video itself. But what I can do is I can pull the audio off it and then put it up on YouTube after I edit it. But what are your thoughts out there in the chat room? Should I just put on the whole catastrophe in the beginning? and actually post the show, I may have people never watch it again.
Just give a warning, even in the title. You could.
I did that on my first live stream show because there was 2.5 minutes of dead air. So, well, all right. So far, there's only one person saying that I should put the whole thing on. All right. So since I've gone past this whole editing part that I can't do now, where I think it looks like an hour and a half, I think I'm going to ask you back on the show, Jordan, when we can have a whole show together. And
definitely.
But for now, I want to thank you so much, and you've given them a sample of what they can look forward to.
Yeah, anytime you're ready, Martin, I'll be in the wings here, ready for it.
All right, sounds good. All right, thanks a lot.
Great talking to you.
Yes, same here. Take care. All right, Bobby, it's your turn. You call back, please. All right, wow. So everyone in the chat room thinks I haven't seen one person in the chat room say that I should not post this video. It's going to be really painful. Very, very painful. Let's see. Looking for Bobby. I'm calling you back, Bobby.
You have reached a Time Warner Cable phone customer.
Wow.
This mailbox is not currently accepting messages.
This is
because
Bobby's
voicemail
mailbox.
has not yet been activated. Please try your call again later. Se ha comunicado con un cliente del servicio telefónico de Time Warner Cable. Este buzón de correo no acepta mensajes.
Bobby, shame on you. You haven't set up your mailbox yet. So, yeah, give it another try. Bobby, I'll put the phone number in. I'm assuming it's you, Bobby.
Yeah, I got your answering service first time.
Oh, okay. I'm not sure how that happened. It was probably I was calling you at the same time. So, Bobby, we met down at a UFO conference in North Carolina. You actually were listening to the show ahead of time, and you connected with me, and we got together. And unfortunately, I had a number of people out in Phoenix that I was supposed to meet up with that's not happening with. And actually, one of the people that I was going to meet up with, I was going to try to get to do the show out there for me, but it was just, there was no time to get it together.
Well, it's actually kind of funny because a week ago, I saw when the little weather storm was heading your way, and I was thinking they were showing how Maine was going to get 2 feet, and I'm thinking, oh, Martin's on top of the mountain, and Maine's going to get 2 feet. I'm like, he's probably not going to make the Phoenix thing. Yeah,
that's right. And we get another 2 feet more tonight.
Yeah, I heard.
Yeah, I'm not a happy camper, but so Bobby, you've seen, since I've known you in the last few years, you have sent me a number of email saying that you had sightings here and there. You've had a few sightings.
Yeah, actually, they kind of go back. They kind of go back, but it sounds nuts. But there's a few people that are like that. I mean, there's many that are like that. I think you just don't hear about it. But it sounds kind of incredible to think that somebody would see more than one UFO.
Yeah, not really. It seems to me that there are a few people. For instance, I know his name's come up a couple of times tonight. Ray Stanford has had I don't know how many. I asked him if he had 50 sightings. He didn't really answer me, but I think I wouldn't be surprised if he had 50 sightings. And there are people that have, and I know I had one, and then I had a maybe, and I want to call it a maybe because I thought I was seeing the International Space Station, and then it looked like it did a couple of jags, but it could have been a trick of my eye or something. I don't know.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, I grew up next to an airport in Miami when I was a kid. When I was a little kid, literally underneath the flight path. Many times I'd be cutting the grass and I'd look up, and like a 747 would literally be covering the sky in front of me.
So why were you cutting the grass and looking up? That sounds dangerous.
Just happened to look up.
Okay, I'm just giving you a hard time.
Yeah. Anyways, so I'm familiar with a lot of flying stuff. I've seen a lot of flying stuff, different kinds of airplanes and stuff like that. So I don't generally call every light that I see a possible UFO, is what I'm getting at. But since I moved here in North Carolina, I've had a couple of sightings. A lot of them, a couple of them are just exactly the same. Were like a white cylinder with a dark stripe down the middle. And then I've seen probably about 3 reports across the United States where people have seen like almost the exact same craft. One time I saw it, I was literally in the backyard. My son was on the deck, and I was throwing grass seed out with my hand. And I happened to look over the tree line, and the tree line's only about 50, 60 feet from me. And here in the North Carolina, the trees are probably about 70, 80 feet tall all around my yard. And that white cylinder I saw was literally sitting still. It was not moving. It wasn't moving at all. And I tried to get my son to see it, and he could not see it. And when I ran up towards the deck to point at it, by the time I looked back, it was gone. But it was literally sitting there, and if I stuck my hand out, it was probably about the size of a dime, but it looked like an airplane fuselage without no wings, but it had a dark stripe down the middle. And a few months earlier, I saw the same thing, but this time it was flying directly over the house at a very high altitude, and I could not see any wings, and it appeared to be like a brilliant white color, and was moving a lot faster than an airliner at that altitude. What I would think was 30, 40,000 feet would normally move. But a lot of the stuff that I saw just goes back to the 80s, growing up in Miami.
Now,
basically,
okay.
Go ahead.
Now, this particular thing that you said you saw a couple of times, what was the shape of it?
Like a cylinder. It was literally like a cigar. And, you know, the time I saw it, like I said, if I stuck a dime out, it would probably cover it. But you could definitely see it was like a cigar. And the one time that I know it was something odd is it was still. It was just sitting there. And I'm going to say almost like it was observing something or somebody, but it was just perfectly still.
Wow. That's quite interesting. But you have, on your way to work, I remember you sent me an email. You had a sighting on your way to work or your way back from work or something.
I was on the way home from work, and the thing that was odd about it, I figured out it was more likely probably an Osprey. We have them fly over here all the time. The military planes with the 2 rotors that actually tilt, so it's kind of like a helicopter plane.
Yeah.
And I've seen them many times come directly over my house in the evening and stuff, and you can hear them because they got a distinct sound. But this one night I was driving home, and I saw 3 white lights and a red light, and they were fairly close together like a craft. The odd part is it seemed like it was coming down sort of an angle across the road in front of me. And I turned down my radio real quick, and I didn't hear nothing. And when I got nearby where it was heading directly towards my left, all I saw was a red little light. And I just thought it was odd that it was flying so low. Because when they come over my house, probably about 400 feet. And so I asked a few people at work the next day, and I actually found 4 people that had seen something. And all 4 people said, yeah, it was coming in for a landing. I'm like, well, there's no airport here, but I realized there is a small little private airport here in Mebane, but they don't have runway lights. It's basically a little dirt airport. So it was odd that everybody kept telling me it was going down, and I called the airport, actually talked to the guy, the manager that runs it, and he said that, you know, planes don't ever land there at night, and then he said, except the military, they can do whatever they want. But I don't believe that it actually landed. But what seemed odd to me is what everybody described to me sounds like it was actually flying nape of the earth, where it was like diving into cleared areas and climbing up above trees. And I've never seen them do that in the daylight. And to me, it would seem like it'd be kind of dangerous to do it at night because it's pretty pitch black out here, and there's power lines and transformers and, you know, all kinds of stuff. So, but
now,
I couldn't prove nothing. So as far as I can tell, it was probably an Osprey.
What did you listen for noises?
No, I didn't hear anything.
And how would you say you were in close enough proximity that you would have heard something?
Well, I asked the 4 different people that I talked to if they actually heard a plane. None of them heard a plane, but they all said the same thing, that it was a plane. I said, well, did you see a plane? They said, no. And they all said that it seemed like it was coming down at an angle, which is the same thing that I saw. But they were in different locations. So I concluded that what they saw was also moving down an angle, and it must have been something that was trying to fly and avoid being up at altitude, actually dipping down over fields and stuff and then climbing up over trees.
Right. Wow.
But anyways, I'm pretty sure that was an Osprey. I see they come over here every 3 or 4 months. Several of them will fly by, and they freak you out. Yeah, exactly right. So they kind of vibrate the house and stuff.
Yeah.
But in Florida, over the years, I've had a few sightings. I've had 2 daytime sightings in Florida. One time I actually saw what looked like a ball bearing. You know, it looked like a perfectly silver ball, and it was daytime, and it was pretty far away, probably about a mile or more, and it seemed to be going away from me. And one thing that I noticed, it was not a balloon or anything because it wasn't going up, it was going horizontal. But it seemed, this is funny, I'm going to say this again, I actually saw it dip up and down as it flew away, almost as if it was running on gravity or something. And now Florida, South Florida is pretty flat, but there are some elevated areas where, you know, the ground probably differs. But I actually saw it actually dip up and down, so it didn't fly like an airplane or anything like that.
That's
and
interesting.
Then another one that I recently remembered, since I've been listening to podcasts, I've been having all these memories come back of stuff that I've completely forgotten. Another one, I was driving home, it was probably this time, I was on the Turnpike, Florida Turnpike, heading from Homestead to Kendall, where I lived in Kendall. And as I came around a curve, those little islands on the Turnpike in Florida where they'll have like palm trees and stuff, just like a little grassy area in the middle of the highway. And as I came around a curve, I saw what I thought was one of those lighted blimps, but it was shaped like a football, and it was brilliant white. And it only seemed to be maybe a half a mile away. And I'm like, oh, wow, that's neat. And I took another curve or went around a bend or something, and I lost sight of it. When I came around, I started looking for the blimp. I'm like, well, it couldn't have gone far. It was just right here. It's a blimp. They're slow. They do like 35, 45 miles an hour. And when I came around, I never saw it again. And I completely forgot about that till about a year ago. Completely forgot about it. And it was just odd, but I saw it.
Wow. Hey, you know, I'm going to call it a night. So thanks so much, Bobby.
Yeah. Oh, and your hat. Everybody in the forums was asking about your hat. What's interesting about the emblem on your hat was that originally that emblem was not released because I think the Air Force and the investigators wanted to kind of keep that hidden in case anybody else would come up with emblems or something.
Yep.
Exactly. They're afraid of somebody going, oh, I saw that.
Right. Yep. Yeah. So, Ben Moss and Tony Angiola had these hats made, I think last year, more than a year ago. And I picked one up out in Phoenix. Thanks so much.
Okay. You have a good night.
All right. You too. Okay, everyone, I want to thank you. I can't believe it's a whole hour, hour and a half, 2 hours, or whatever. Looks like it's gone by here. And I want to thank everyone in the chat room for your great participation. And without you, I would have never done the show. I would have just hung it up. So thanks so much for being in the chat room tonight. A lot of great activity. You guys are great. Thanks so much. And next week, we will be back with John Hansen. He's the one who helped Charles Halt write the book on Rendlesham Forest that is 800 some odd pages long. I know we have Donnie in the chat room who is reading through that right now. And Donnie, go ahead and post up on the chat room what you think so far. You kind of shared something with me, but I won't make it public. But go ahead and put it in. All right. So thanks so much. And remember to keep your eyes to the sky. And we will see you next week.